Good morning, YouTube friends. I want to show you specifically how to do the foundation rows on the overlay Mosaic Crochet patterns. I do have a tutorial video on the stitches, but this is specifically to talk about how do you determine how many stitches you need, and then how do you create them. So you can see my little sample here. I have started 2 little bumps. So this is actually 2 repeats of a pattern that's not even out. I don't even know what I'm doing with that pattern. But the point is, you can do repeats as many times as you want to get the length that you want. So a lot of Mosaic Crochet is written in that form. A lot of my stuff has been just a giant picture, and it just tells you start with this many stitches and that's how many you start with. But if you wanted to do a piece like this, which I have come out with some now, or you could like do my squares or something, like a small square, you just ignore those boxes and you can do the insides. You can just repeat them, right? So if you want to do that, how do you determine how many stitches to start with? This one here, I don't actually know the stitch count. This was just my sample to show you. But we are going to pretend like our picture has 5 stitches in it. And when you're doing mosaic, you have to also add this joining stitch. So my sample starts with this dark purple line, but we have this joining stitch. This is just how you get your yarn attached to your project. And then at the end, this is how my picture ends, and then there's this stitch on the end that is how you cut off your yarn. So it could be different for some designers, but most designers are going to say that you have your image in the middle plus an extra repeating, because often the way the light and the dark colors work, there's often a balancing stitch. So I can't start with purple here and end with purple here and put an even number inside. It has to be odd, which means there's usually your picture plus a balancing stitch plus 1 on the front and 1 on the back. Most patterns should tell you this information. So my patterns will say, for this one, for example, it would say there's a repeat of 20, or whatever this happens to be, plus if there's a border design. So I've included this 3 stitches in my border design because I don't want it to be in the middle. And for my musicale, for example, there was quite a big border design, but sometimes there's none. There's no border design at all. So you have to pay attention to what design you're working with. So this one is going to actually have a repeat of 20, and then it'll say plus, and that's the stuff that you don't necessarily repeat. So mine is going to say plus, and it'll have 3 on this side, 3 on the other side, 1 for balancing, and 1 for the end and the beginning, which means plus 9. So 3, 6, 1 balancing 7, the front joining stitch 8, the ending stitch 9. So when you're deciding how long you want to make your pattern, you want to repeat this inside pattern. Say you want to do it 4 times. So you'll have 20 and 20 and 20 and 20. That gets you to 80 plus that 9. And that's how many stitches you want to start with. So we're going to show you, if you wanted to do your basic chain and back, and you decided we're going to pretend that our middle picture here, we're going to just pretend that it's 5. And there's no extra border things. There's just 5 in the middle. And there's a joining stitch and there's an end stitch. And then there's 1 balancing stitch, okay? So what I usually do, if you wanted to start with the chain and single crochet back, now you've decided there's a joining stitch, there's an end stitch, there's 1 balancing stitch, and there's 5 for our design. And we want to repeat that design. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's how many we would like to start. If we wanted to repeat it more, you would repeat 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. And of course we started with those 3, but that's just for counting. Of course the joining stitch goes here, the end stitch goes on the other side. So that's just how I figure out my counts, by just lumping them together. Now if you are doing chaining and single crochet back, once you've got your count, you need to do another chain, because your single crochet has to skip 1. You can't go right into that next stitch. So you add another one, and then you would single crochet all the way back. And you would be counting them just to make sure, because we always make mistakes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's one of our repeats. And we would also have another repeat because we want to do it twice. That's what I decided for this random video. 2, 3, 4, 5, and of course our design usually has that balancing stitch, which we're going to have to add it there. And of course we have to take into account that there is a joining stitch and an end stitch. Okay, so we're not counting that extra chain. That's just for us to turn it. But now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And that's when we cut it. We do, this is how I do for cutting. I just do an extra here, and then when you cut it, it doesn't have to be very long tails. You pull it through, now you have your little knot, okay? So obviously most projects are going to be larger than this, but this is just to show you. Now if you wanted to do these 13 stitches in a chainless foundation, you would have to still do your math and figure out that you need 13. So if you remember with this one, we actually chained 14 because of that turning chain. But if we only need 13 stitches on the bottom, that's this bottom row here, the foundation row, then you can do this chainless foundation, which actually starts with 2 chains, but it, I don't know, that's just what they call them. So the 2 chains, that's essentially this end. And now we need to make 13 single crochet. I don't need to yarn over, I don't know what I'm doing here. So find, this is our first chain bump and our second one. So we're gonna go in here, yarn over and pull it through. And then we yarn over and pull it through again, just through one loop. That counts as the chain that's on the bottom here. Then we yarn over and pull through 2, that's like a single crochet. So you've created the chain and the single crochet all at the same time. It's kind of fiddly, but that's what it looks like. And when you want to do another one, you're going to go into that chain space. Try to find the 2 loops that are on the bottom. Sometimes I pinch it because it just helps me to find it. So you pull it through and you got 2. You're going to want to fiddle with the tension as well, because otherwise you'll get a very curvy piece. And you pull it through once, that's the chain on the bottom, and then you finish. So that's now 2 stitches, and we need 13. So we're going to go in again, go through those 2 bottom loops, and then we go through 1 loop to make the chain on the bottom, and then 2 to make the single crochet. So that's 3. So this is how you can get your foundation row any length you want it. I prefer this way because if I do this, now I have tails on two sides, and the rest of my project is going to be front and back, right? So I'll have an extra one on the other side. So I like putting the tails opposite ends, which this one does. 1 tail here and 1 tail will be at the other end. And also it kind of, if I'm not sure about my count, especially when you have patterns that are like 300 and some stitches, sometimes you mess up. You can leave this live. You don't have to cut it off right away, and you can do your next row. And when you get to the end and you realize you made a mistake and your count is off, you can just keep going. You don't have to frog the whole thing. Frog means pull it apart, like rip it, rip it, rip it. So that is why I prefer this to start, because I make mistakes and because I like the tails. And there is a few new patterns of mine that are coming out where they are adjustable for the width. Now my musicale was adjustable, but it was quite a big section, so I think the maximum repeat was pretty much like 4, maybe 5 if you were using a thin yarn. Some of these, like this pattern, I don't remember which one it was. That's why this scrap is kind of useless, because I'll have to go dig through my drafts and be like, what pattern was this? But I think it was a pattern that is on my docket to come out soon. And the repeats are much shorter. So you would want to do probably quite a few of them. But I guess it depends on how big you want your project. If you want a pillow, you don't really need to do that many, right? So I do talk a lot, I'm sorry. That's why I decided to make a short video, and it's already too long, right? When you're counting them, just like normal, you can count these V's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is 13, if I was counting correctly. I was talking, and you see I did get a little bit, my tension got a little bit weird. That's what happens when you're babbling. So I would count, I would ignore this thing. I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, okay, 12, and we decided we needed 13, right? then your project is going to be a different number, but the concept is the same. So now you can cut this off if you want. If you're not sure about your count, you can leave a really, really long tail, or you don't have to cut it off at all. It's up to you. But the point is that now you have your foundation row. They look very similar. I'm not sure if this one really matters what's the right side and the wrong side, but technically that's the way it goes. And then you would go to your second color. Now my patterns, because they are written for interlocking crochet most of the time, I do have a few coming out now that are not both. So most of my patterns, I should say properly, will have this border on it where it's dark, light, dark, and then the edge, it has this little line here, and then it goes dark, light, dark again. And that is because that's how it locks in with the interlocking crochet. So most of my patterns have this set up. There's a few that don't, and you're free to ignore that part if you're skilled and you know how to read the charts and you want to skip it. It really doesn't affect me at all. Okay? I like to see creativity. I know some designers get very picky about what you can do with their patterns, and that's fine. That's how they work. You should respect them. Mine, I really like seeing creativity. If you're in my Facebook group, you'll know we've got some really cool people doing cool things with my patterns. So I really barely call them my patterns, which is why designers don't like that. Because once you've changed it so much, it's like not really mine anymore, but I love seeing it and I don't mind at all if you do that. So just don't try to like sell my stuff with 2 stitches changed and think it's yours. That part, that does hurt. So now I'm going to show you how our count works again once we grab this one. So the next row, it's probably going to say something like, if you're reading my patterns, it'll say joining stitch or JS. So you go under 2 loops and you do a single crochet. And then it'll have that pattern. So our pattern had 5. So we're going to go in the back loop. We're going to do 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I wanted to do the repeat only twice. You're probably going to have to do it more than once. If you need to put a stitch marker here to keep your count, you should, because stitch markers are your friend. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then often to get that colors to be matching, you have to have that balancing stitch. So my patterns are usually continuation of the pattern. Sometimes it's all just single crochets just to end it thicker. Just pay attention to your pattern, it'll be fine. And then the ending stitch goes under both loops again. That keeps everything locked in nice and tight. And then we cut it off. I know that's the scary part. This little, oh yeah, you have to use scissors properly. They don't work when you pick them up weird. This is going to be the sample that doesn't do anything, right? So that is how it works. Doesn't matter what kind of foundation row you've got. You are going to do the same kind of counting and you're going to do the same kind of second row. So you find that loop, go under 2 for your joining stitch, just like a normal single crochet. This is actually called a standing single crochet when you put that knot on there. It's kind of weird, eh? Then you're going to have your pattern, which for me is going to be a repeat of 5. So you could go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. There is a few cows coming out that are going to be like 50, 51? Is that the repeat? I forget. 49 or 51 or something. So you probably don't need as many repeats, but you're still going to have to count, right? So you get to your joining stitch, your 10 for the repeat, your balancing stitch or whatever the designer wants to call it, and then your ending stitch goes under both loops, and then you cut it off. And that's how you make a foundation row, okay? So if your pattern, so there's a design out there that you want to start with, you need to start like this. Then you can start with the rest of the pattern because now you have a purple and a green that you can go into. So your next row in purple, if there was no foundation purple, you wouldn't be able to grab those loops, right? And if you don't start with the green also, then there's no green. So a foundation really has 2 rows and you can do those counts. Hopefully it's clear as mud. I did want to just give that information out there for you guys. It's supposed to be a quick video, but I babble. What can you do? And I do have some more videos coming out soon, so subscribe to my channel and you'll get some nice updates. And I'm hoping to do another live video one of these days, but it won't be a surprise live again. It'll be an actually planned. That's it for me, guys. Bye.